All right, hi everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Before I hand it over to Cleveland, I would like to point your attention over to our question and answer box. If you have any questions during the program, feel free to type them in there and we will ask them out loud for you. And we'll also save a few minutes at the end for your questions as well. Okay, I'll hand it over to Cleveland.
Good morning, friends and members. Welcome. I'm thrilled to have you join in today. I am particularly happy to welcome my old friend Mathew Hill as our expert on ukulele today. And I thought we would just jump right into Mathew. I want to tell our members a little bit about you, if you just allow me to picture your CV.
Okay.
Matthew and I have been friends and colleagues for a long time through our mutual work together in the musical instrument world and the museum field. Matthew was one of the original curators who helped create the Musical Instrument Museum in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is a major landmark institution in that city, next door to Phoenix. That was a monumental endeavor that was built from nothing, really.
Less than nothing.
It was a dream. It was a dream of the former executive CEO of the Target store industry and the Musical Instrument Museum which is, in terms of square footage, the largest in the country, certainly rivaled probably any institution in the world in terms of size and activity. Mathew was in charge of building that collection and putting the original exhibitions together. And we've
and getting the ukuleles.
Yeah. Exactly. Matthew has a PhD from the University of Edinburgh in musical instruments, and it is an all-round expert into that anything related to instruments that it might dare to throw his way. Yes. So, Mathew, I got in touch with you because we were doing this ukulele class. Someone has commented on the echo, and I'm hearing the echo myself. I'm not sure why that is, but I'm hearing myself about 2 seconds behind.
Okay, let me see if it's me. Say something and tell me if you still hear the echo.
It has gone away now. It has gone away. Thank you very much.
Were you still hearing the echo?
No, it's gone. Thank you. Thank you.
What's that?
No, it's fine. It's good now.
Okay.
Although, wait. Well, it's softer. It's softer. If you're wondering why my words were so measured, is because one ear is I'm hearing one thing, and 2 seconds later I'm hearing myself say it again. But that's better now. Okay. Yes, as most of you will know, a few weeks ago we opened a fun little exhibit in our Headley Gallery. Headley is our smallest gallery. It's the only gallery outside of the Guinness spaces that is climate control, and we had a very precious little object that we wanted in that special environment, namely this very rare and priceless ukulele from the 1920s that traveled on the bird expedition flying over the North Pole, and which subsequently traveled the world with its owner, Dick Contour, who was a seaman involved in those Arctic expeditions of Admiral Byrd. The little ukulele is on an exhibit there, along with an exact reproduction that was made by C.F. Martin and Company. The original ukulele was made by Martin, and then almost 100 years later, it was reproduced by Martin. And Mathew will be sharing some sounds of that reproduction with us later. Anyway, what I'm particularly interested in having Mathew talk to us about, in addition to playing a bit, is to kind of take us back to the 1920s and talk about the place of the ukulele in American culture at that time. It's very easy for us, I think, to dismiss the instrument. And this is one of the battles I feel like I'm fighting all the time when I tell the people that we have a ukulele exhibit at the museum. I always feel that the ukulele is immediately dismissed as some kind of toy or instrument not to be taken seriously. Although if any of you have a chance tonight to go to Mayo in Morristown, Jake, what's his name? Mathew?
Shimba Makuro.
Yeah, is performing tonight. He is like the rock star of the ukulele.
Oh,
correct me if I'm wrong.
You know, Cleveland, I'm a little disappointed you didn't fly me out there just to introduce the concert.
Right.
Yeah, no, this guy really is the business. And if you are one of those people who think, oh yeah, ukuleles, how cute, you will have your mind completely changed by the end of the concert. Because
I found it very serendipitous that his performance tonight in Morristown is the evening of our performance this morning, Matthew. So you get first dibs on the ukulele, introducing it to our audience. So I won't expect you to play Bohemian Rhapsody for us this morning, but
how about Sunshine of Your Love?
Try, Matthew. So, Matthew, take us back to the 1920s and the ukulele as Americans would have known and loved it back then.
Okay, well, firstly, Cleveland, you are so right about the ukulele often being dismissed by those who don't know. The movie producer Sam Goldwyn once famously said about one of his movies that was savaged by the critics. He said, nobody liked it except the people. And the ukulele is a lot like that, in that by people in the media, by people who are supposed, musical experts, it's often marginalized and dismissed. And yet, and people talk about ukulele revivals. But there's never been a ukulele revival because it's never really gone away. Once it became popular in the United States, it's been there. It just comes in and out of the media consciousness.
So how did it come to the United States, Matthew? It's because it's not an original American instrument.
Oh, well, okay. And this is a question that would require 5 webinars to answer. So I'm going to try to be very, very brief.
But you have no more than 5 minutes.
Yes. No, I'm not even good. Essentially, the ukulele is a Hawaiian instrument that is based on Portuguese instruments that were brought to Hawaii by field workers that arrived in 1879 from the Madeira Islands on a ship called the Ravenscraig. And there were some stringed instruments similar to it in the islands that were also from previous Portuguese instruments. But these people from the Ravenscraig came and they played their instruments in public, and the locals just went nuts over it. And that's where it really starts. And the instrument that the Portuguese brought was called the machete. There was also another one called the rajau. And again, it's not particularly germane to this to go into what all those are, but they are like the ancestors of the ukulele. But within 10 years, people on the island were making what we now know as a ukulele. And again, what makes that, we don't have time to go into, but they were making ukuleles. It soon got popular in the United States. The very first ukulele performance that we know of in the United States was at the Columbian Exhibition of 1893. There was a group of Hawaiian singers that came over to promote one of the exhibitions on the Midway, which was a live volcano panorama.
Oh.
And this group would play to get people to go in. But what really, really made it take off was a Broadway show called Bird of Paradise in 1904. And it was, featured quote unquote Hawaiian music. And it was like the Cats and the chorus line of its day. Everybody knew this. And what happened is that glee clubs in East Coast colleges would play songs from popular Broadway, perform, these Broadway tunes. So when they were doing this, they decided to add ukulele to them. And once they started adding, ukuleles are pretty easy to play. And, they decided, hey, if we can add a ukulele to the Hawaiian songs from Bird of Paradise, we can add it to other things. And that's where we get the cliche. I don't know if you've ever seen like old cartoons or old pictures. There's a cliche of the college student from the 1910s wearing a big raccoon coat, a pork pie hat with a college pennant, and a ukulele.
Right.
And so that's where that cliche comes from. And there's an article in the Musical Trades Review from 1913 or 1914 where they talk about this craze on colleges, saying, hey, we're selling, all of our stores are selling lots and lots of ukuleles. And it seems to be, and they don't go into why all of this. They're saying, but yeah, we're selling lots of these, and it seems to be really big on college campuses. Now,
so Matthew, were they played, they weren't played solo, they were played like in groups, right? Like
they were played often, there'd be one player who would be backing up a group of people. Yes, you could have more than one, but typically they were not solo instruments, but they were used singly. Kind of like how Italian harpsichords could be played solo, but they were often used to back up singers and other performers. Don't smile at that. It's a legitimate comparison.
That's right. I got that analogy, Matthew, but I don't know that our guest did. But
So, but here's the other thing about this, is that was not the only boost that the ukulele has. And if you ask a lot of people where it really hits the public consciousness, again, outside of this East Coast college crowd, is that in 1915, there was the Pan-Pacific exhibition in San Francisco. And it later moved to San Diego. But there was a Hawaii pavilion. And Hawaii sent over, performers. And they had singers who were backed up by the ukulele. And that's where lots of people saw this. And so that brought it further into the public consciousness. And it was those two things kind of together that really solidifies the ukulele as a popular instrument. And to give you an idea of how popular this was during the 1920s, most sheet music, even sheet music today, will have the the melody and a rudimentary piano arrangement on it, but it'll have guitar chords.
right.
Well, back then they didn't put guitar chords on sheet music; they put ukulele chords because that's what people were playing. And there was all kinds of ads in the back of magazines. Learn the ukulele, self-tutors. There was a huge market for teaching materials, which, by the way, the guy, Richard Contner, who did this, that was one of his side gigs. Besides being a scientist,
Yes.
he was also a very famous ukulele player, and he made a lot of his money from teaching. He wrote arrangements of music. He wrote, how to play ukulele books.
Right. We actually have one of those tutorials on exhibit.
Right.
Tutorial.
So, and again, this was just like in the 60s, when the Beatles came out, every kid wanted to play electric guitar because that was cool, Well, in the 20s, the ukulele was a similar thing. And it's kind of funny because what was different about the ukulele compared to other instruments with this is that it was an instrument of sexual liberation.
Oh.
In that, before this, there had been instruments were usually very gendered. There were instruments that women played. There were instruments that men played. Mm-hmm. This is not always the case, but I mean, there was there was a tendency. Ukuleles.
Before you go farther, Matthew, can you give an example of the gender? I mean, what instruments might have been female as opposed to male?
Okay, a good one is in that the early 19th century, the guitar, considering how masculine it is now, was almost entirely, studied and played by females, by women. Especially, I'm thinking of like in London. And yes, you had teachers that were male, but the students were all female. Right. And, this was this was a thing. Young ladies of good culture played the guitar.
Interesting.
Which I find ironic, considering how hyper masculine the guitar becomes in thing. Even though women are really reclaiming this, and that's another story for another time. So, but yeah, there are. But the ukulele was unisex, and again, there is an advertisement from a newspaper in Texas, of all places, from the early 1910s, where, and I'm paraphrasing, but not much, the text of the ad says, "Ladies, you want to get that guy? Play a ukulele." I mean, and it's almost that direct. And, I mean, for 1913, that's pretty amazing, to, like, even acknowledge that, like, ladies would want to get guys.
Well, it's also a weird marketing strategy, thinking that the guys, that the ladies would need a ukulele to have the guys interested in it. That's
it is and it isn't. But this is what is, again, is so interesting about the ukulele. And again, I don't think this is generally recognized now. But we were talking about cliches and mental images before with the college student. The other ukulele cliche that, if you think of, is there is basically the person playing the ukulele in the moonlight, and they are usually in one of two situations. They're on the beach, in Waikiki, which of course is a famous early Hawaiian song, "On the Beach at Waikiki," and or they're in a canoe. And there will be somebody playing the ukulele and somebody listening to the ukulele in a canoe. And again, typically under the moonlight, with or without palm trees. And yes,
Matthew, our guests do not know that you're many time zones away from us, and it's early in the morning for you. So please have a sip of your coffee.
Say that again?
I said, please have a sip of your coffee, because our guests will only have just heard that you're in many time zones away from us. So it's early morning there.
Okay.
So let me just queue up another question for you that I had about the ukulele, and that was, since you mentioned the guitar, did economies of scale come in at all? Were these being mass produced? Were they a lot cheaper than other instruments? I mean, clearly cheaper than the piano, but what about cheaper than the guitar? Is there a reason financially that the ukulele was so popular, or was it?
They were, but they could also be quite expensive. And it seems that expensive instruments sold pretty well. but yes, there was a lot of, I mean, if I remember right, you could get a a cheap ukulele for I think for some reason like the amount $250 during the 1910s, comes, which again would have been a fairly decent amount of money, but it's not that expensive. I know that on Martin ukuleles, their cheapest during the 1920s was the Style O. And I know that their Style 3, which was the most expensive that was generally available. They did have a Style 5, which was rare, and but a Style 3 was more than twice as expensive. I mean, the fancy ones were fancy. So, by the way, the Contner one was a Style 1. Which again was not the cheapest, but it was a basic ukulele.
Right. By the way, I see that Dick Folk has joined our call, and so we may want to ask him some Martin questions later on. I'm particularly curious about from a manufacturing point of view, a company like Martin would have seen probably changes in their sales statistics. I mean, I'd be interested to know, compared to their guitar production, what was their ukulele production?
Well, I can ask this, but I'd want to hear it more from Dick. Essentially, the ukulele really was a cash cow for Martin during this time. The guitar was having actually a little bit of a dip during the late teens and 20s. And when ukuleles were taken off, they started selling lots and lots of these. So I mean, I know that there was about of their cheapest model, the Style O, soprano. I believe they made about 65,000 or so during that period. And I mean, and that was like that's a huge amount, because remember, this was, even though we think of Martin as a big company and thing today, these were all handmade instruments. These were made in a workshop. That's a lot of ukuleles to make out. So
right. So Matthew, I think probably our guests are tired of hearing us ramble. Let's hear a little something. What might have been played on that little ukulele back in 1926 when it made its voyage to the north and back?
Oh, they would have played, like, again, the typical kind of tunes. I mean, guaranteed they would have played things like "Ain't She Sweet," like. Or they might have played something like Lady of Spain.
There's a video clip that we have in the exhibition of, I think it's the Conter playing his ukulele, when one of the seamen is having his beard shaved off. They're all celebrating, and he had made a bet that, or he'd made a pledge to the crew that he wouldn't shave until until the expedition was successfully completed. And it's a silent film, but you see the beard getting shaved off, and next to him is Dick Conter just strumming away. And I'm trying to imagine what would that have sounded. It just looks like he's wildly strumming.
He would have probably been doing, again, this strum all the time like this.
Yeah, that's exactly the hand motion. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, and again, that kind of triple very, very typical of the style of playing back then.
That's very cool to have that. That's very cool to have that come alive, because I've looked at that silent clip so many times and I've always wondered what it actually sounded like.
Well, and you have to remember too that as much as Contner was picked because of his scientific ability and stuff like that, but they didn't have any entertainment on these kind of things. I mean, nowadays somebody who's going on a expedition like that, you would bring small video games, you would bring television, you would bring things to watch, there'd be books to read and stuff. They didn't have any of that. And so to have a guy who could entertain you and have everybody sing along and stuff like that, yeah, that kept you from going nuts.
Right.
So, and to have somebody of his caliber who was, a true professional entertainer, who was one of the better ukulele players in the world at the time, that would be a big deal.
Right. So do you think he played the ukulele when after he left the service and, was a private individual, and we know that he traveled with the crew and expedition leaders for a number of years, and that's where so many of these signatures came from. I always wondered if he performed for the various dignitaries and celebrities that actually signed the instrument. And if he did play for them, what did he play? I mean, if you're at a White House reception while you're getting your ukulele signed, do you just warm it up and play a little tune for the president? I suppose.
Well, it's funny. You say that he probably played his old standards. The stuff that he, knew. I mean, he would have played popular tunes of the day. He would have whipped out Paper Moon or something. So, yeah. Somebody like that, again, was a real entertainer. He could have just pulled out all kinds of tunes on, just off the top of his hat.
Right. So, Matthew, you have a few other instruments with you today. I think you have your own small collection of ukuleles. I know.
I actually have it's not even that small, but yes. Well, so yeah, and by the way, and again, the one I've been playing here is this is the Martin reproduction of the Contner that you have. So yeah, I basically arm twisted Dick into selling me one right away, because there was just no way I was not going to have one, and the only thing I've done with this, by the way, is I have strung it with gut strings.
Oh.
Which would have been original.
That would have been original, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Back then, nylon. Now, most ukuleles today are strung with nylon or carbon fiber. Not carbon fiber. I can't think. But various non-natural materials. Yeah. But back in 1926, gut. That was that.
It means it was out of tune all the time.
Well, yes and no. They stretch and they stay, and you learn to play with the material.
Right.
But yes, to a modern player, it is kind of, it would be kind of weird. I mean, it is kind of a different animal.
Yeah, it would have been softer too, right?
There is a definite gut sound. It is.
But you said that you have gut strings on yours, so that's really kind of an authentic.
Yes. No. I string it old school.
Oh, good. Very cool. That's really. I mean, for our guests, that's very cool to have an instrument strung in the original gut, because you just don't hear that. I mean, if you go to hear Jake's concert tonight, you will not hear a ukulele strung.
No, and the modern sound, and I am not casting aspersions on it. But modern ukulele players want their instruments to cut. They want them to be they want them to project. They want them to be loud. Back then, that would not have been as much of an issue, in that because you would have been playing for smaller groups. Again, it's kind of like a clavichord that, people go, oh, a clavichord isn't loud. Well, it's perfectly loud for what you need it to do. You can hear it. It's just not made to play in a large concert hall. And this was, again, kind of a similar thing. This was meant to play for yourself and a small group of people. And, I mean, you're not having any problem hearing me play it.
Nope.
So, but...
Very interesting.
Yeah, but here's another instrument, and this instrument is almost exactly from the same time period as Contner's. This is another Martin ukulele, but this is an instrument known as a taro patch.
It's double strung.
Yes.
Oh.
In fact, for the people interested, essentially, because of the way this is strung exactly like a Renaissance guitar.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you that the Hawaiians who played this instrument had no idea of that fact. And no Renaissance music was ever played on this instrument except when I do it. So, and the taro patch, or the taro patch fiddle, which, by the way, in the very early stages of the ukulele, they used the names ukulele and taro patch fiddle interchangeably. It's not always clear of what instrument people are talking about in the earliest days. A little later, again, the double-strung instrument becomes known as the taro patch fiddle, and the four-string instrument becomes known as the ukulele.
Are the dimensions about the same? Can you hold them?
No. This one is a little bit. If you can see, this is the taro patch is a little bit bigger.
Right.
And the taro patch people started making them with four strings, and that turned into the concert ukulele. Right. So a concert-sized ukulele is essentially a taro patch with four strings. So it's a little bit more complicated than that, because, again, in these early days, there's lots of things. But you could say that basically, in this case. By the way, the name taro patch was an insult. Bless me, at the time. It was not, it was a pejorative, because it was implying that the native Hawaiians basically were lazy, and all they wanted to do was sit in their taro patch and play the ukulele. And
right.
Yeah, so they didn't want to work hard like the white man. They wanted to enjoy life, and it's only taken us 100 years or so to go, well, hang on. Maybe they were on to something.
Taro patch, but what's the rationale for there to be two different instruments that, to the untrained eye, look essentially the same?
This probably comes from its Portuguese origins. And while in Spain, there was basically one instrument, the guitar, and they were made pretty much the same, whether they were made in Madrid or Valencia or Barcelona. They were pretty much the same. Portugal was I don't think so. And every little town had their own instrument that might be made slightly different, tuned slightly different. You went the next village over, and it's no, we don't play those. We play these. And even, for example, the famous Portuguese guitar has two variations, that are based in two Portuguese cities. And it has to do with the universities. That's another story for another time.
Right.
And in Portugal, there were all kinds of variations of instruments. And so I think that there was just more of a tradition of experimentation. And again, this is a longer discussion. I want to go in there. Yeah. There's a big difference on how you approach a double-strung instrument as opposed to a single-strung instrument.
Okay, so demonstrate, please.
What's
By the
that?
way, I said, please demonstrate. By the way, Dick has asked to confirm that the Taro Patch is actually a tenor size. Will you classify that as a tenor size instrument?
Oh, okay. Well, it's tenor size for what they called tenors in the 1920s.
Okay.
Modern tenors are bigger.
Right.
So this is exactly the same as a modern concert-sized ukulele.
Matthew, I'm going to ask you to play a little something on that. Chloe, I'm going to ask you, since you're moderating this from behind the scenes, maybe you can make it possible for Dick to join us if he'd like to say anything for the last few minutes.
Yes, no, please,
Sure, no
yeah.
problem.
But while she's figuring that out, Matthew, go ahead and play something for us on that double-strung Taro Patch.
Okay.
The sound is a little brighter to me. Are those strings or those nylon strings? Or
Say that again?
are those modern strings? Are they sent?
Nope, they're gut too.
They're also gut, but it had a brighter sound to me than the other.
Well, this is a particularly bright instrument, and this is because it's typically it's typical Martin build of the 1920s. These were built really light. They're really loud. There are a reason why they sold lots of these.
Right.
And this instrument is particularly interesting in that unusually I know the exact provenance of it. I'm the second owner.
Who was the first owner?
It was a woman named Marion Hattrick
Okay.
who bought it in New York City in 1926.
Wow.
While she was working at the makeup counter at Macy's.
Are you serious?
Yep. She was a flapper. This was a genuine 1920s flapper-owned instrument.
Wow.
And the thing is, for a
So that's
woman,
almost 100. That's almost 100 years old. That's
Yes.
as old as the contra ukulele practically that we have on.
I think the Contour, I'm not sure what year it was made. Dick will probably know.
Dick, by the way, can hear us. He's hooked in, so he can speak if he'd like, I believe.
1926.
Okay. Right, it was. Well, this is the same year as. So this is the same year as the Contour. So, and Dick has actually seen this instrument. You saw it in Nazareth a few years back.
I was drooling over it.
So the older woman that you purchased this from.
I purchased it from her estate.
From her estate. Got it.
So, but yeah, and I actually figured out what music store she probably bought it from, which I can't. Because there was a limited amount of music stores in New York City at the time that would have sold a Taro Patch, because that was a pretty. Taro Patches were kind of considered a professional instrument, in that they were considered more difficult to play, and well, they are, but they and so usually people who are a little bit more into it, who are a little more hardcore,
Right.
pardon me, would be the people who play it. So I mean, for a young lady to be playing a Taro Patch in 1926, that would be like the equivalent of a young lady having a full DJ outfit, now and doing stuff like that. She was hip.
Right.
I also figured
also,
out
she
that
also
working at
lived-
Macy's, she probably ate lunch at the Automat on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's fun to. We need to get the ukulele woven into some of these historically themed films that are happening. I think it's probably sadly lacking. It would be very appropriate in a lot of these old period dramas. Dick, since you're there, I heard your voice. Do you know anything about the production numbers at Martin back in the teens and 20s?
I do. I have my chart handy here and be interested to see that in terms of assorted ukuleles, Martin made 202,588 ukuleles between 1915 and 1994. But I have them by year, starting in 1915 with only 12 ukuleles, and peaking in 1926, the year that Richard Conter got his ukulele. They made 14,101 ukuleles in 1926.
Wow.
So production actually peaked in the year of the expedition.
That's correct. The year before, 1925, was also a huge year with 10,870 ukuleles.
Uh-huh.
There was a whole section of the second floor of the Martin factory that was allocated for ukuleles, and a whole, work area. It overtook guitars. The number of guitars made. Let's see. I can access that. Sorry, I'm not prepared.
That's okay. Don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm glad you joined in.
Oh, and I also have ukulele pricing charts starting at $10 in 1922. They were less. They were $5 originally, but by 1922 they were $10.
And
I would imagine if social media had existed in the 20s, that the expedition and the fame of that little ukulele traveling to the Arctic and back probably would have made your production numbers even wilder.
Uh,
The way that things go viral today, that would have just been a business bonanza.
Though there were some things that were the equivalent of social media at the time that did. For example, there is a famous movie short. Dick, I'm blanking on the name. Who is the Wizard of Strings?
Roy Smeck.
Thank you. Roy Smeck made a short film in 1927, 26, 27, around there, where he plays the ukulele. And remember, this is one of the earliest sound films.
Right.
This was brand new, and he just is playing the heck out of this thing. I mean, this holds up as virtuosic playing even today. Wow. And in fact, I have seen multiple times this on YouTube, and it has the title of Eddie Van Halen's grandfather.
Oh.
To give you an idea of, what kind of... And on top of that, I think in the same film, he did the first known multi-track recording where he plays with, himself playing other instruments, 4 other instruments, and it was on film, and, he's got them all synced together.
Wow.
And he even does a thing where it's on a quad, screen. And he even works out that when everybody is doing their solo, all the other 3 versions of him are looking at the guy in the right part of the screen. Right. 1926 or 27.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's amazing. That's amazing, because Les Paul often takes credit for multi-track recording, and this would have preceded Les Paul.
Les Paul took it to a completely different level. Yeah. But, we often find these things where, somebody did it. And like I say, what's even amazing is the first multi-track recording was actually a video or a film.
Right.
So I have another thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is that after World War II, because of Pearl Harbor and the war, the soldiers came back, many of which had served in Hawaii. They came back to the mainland with with lots and lots of ukuleles, and there was a second wave, a surge in ukulele popularity that was also picked up in the movies with Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley.
Oh, right.
And I show here 1950 having a surge of ukulele sales, 11,722
Wow.
made just in 1950. And that continued with pretty high numbers all the way up until about mid-60s, it started to dissipate.
And Dick, you know, a good part of that also probably had to do with Arthur Godfrey.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh, right.
And again, for a lot of the people here, I mean, another person who was really important in the history of ukulele, who's almost forgotten now, but Arthur Godfrey in the early 50s was one of the first really big TV stars. He had a number of shows, but this big one was Arthur Godfrey's Talent Scouts.
Yeah.
But he was famous for playing a baritone. And he played regular ukulele, but he played baritone ukulele, and he was really instrumental, if you'll pardon the pun, in making the ukulele popular again. And he helped sell tons of these plastic ukuleles made of styrene. And don't laugh, Dick. I've played many of these. They're actually not bad instruments.
No, I was personal friends with Mario McAfee, and I know.
Okay, now I'm jealous.
And I know this, and I also hired Roy Smeck to perform at a guitar symposium. And
Okay,
unbelievable ukulele.
Okay, I'm impressed.
And even Mario McAfee and Roy Smeck were at the same event that I put on. 1985.
So when you get into 60s, that's when Tiny Tim shows up, right? I hate to.
Oh yeah, Tiny. Can't discount Tiny.
At the National Music Museum the year before I left, we got a huge donation of Tiny Tim stuff, including his jumpsuit that was made out of Budweiser cans or something. I forget. It was a major controversy with our collections committee about whether to accession his jumpsuit or not. But,
so I think I'm right. His real name was Herbert Curry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
And I believe he was a Minnesotan, which is why that collection was out in my part of the world.
Don't you know?
No. Matthew, you have a third instrument. Our time's getting short. Don't you have
Okay, well, I just wanted to pull out that, ukuleles come in many, many sizes.
Yeah.
And I have a really, really tiny sopranissimo. Where if this is a soprano, this is a sopranissimo ukulele, and this is absolutely,
that's what Mickey Mouse would have played.
Yes, well, I mean, it's just. So, like I say, and I literally can keep this in like a coat pocket, which is what they were designed to do.
Right, exactly. Okay, Matthew, thanks. We've gotten to that point in our hour where we should probably see if our guests and friends here have any questions for you, or maybe for Dick. I hope not for me. But we'll open it up. You can type them into the Q&A block there if you'd like. See what we may not have answered or what came up that you're curious about. And while we're waiting, Dick, the production of ukuleles today, is it radically different from how it would have been 100 years ago? I mean, obviously you've got all kinds of tools and machines today that, I mean, how were they more handcrafted or more or less machine made then, or where does automation and machine fabrication figure in? I know Martin has been doing this for a long enough time that you can tell us a little bit about how that production has evolved over time.
Well, the process is largely the same. The body, the braces would be glued to the top and the back. The rim, the sides would be bent and glued to their blocks. The ribbon lining would be installed with clothespins by hand. The top and back would be glued and the body sanded up. The only difference that I can see is that the neck is machined almost to its final dimension. It needs to be sanded. And the dovetail of the neck, instead of being part of the piece of mahogany that the neck is carved from, is actually applied to the neck with 2 screws. So it makes the neck fitting process much simpler. So in effect, it's pretty much the same process. They don't make as many ukuleles as they did back then.
Right. And also taking advantage of having you on this call, Dick, a little bit about the reproduction, because I know that you were really closely involved with this because you and Larry Bartram were the folks behind this whole research project that led to your book.
I really want to give a shout out to Larry Bartram for his incredible role as in the authorship of the book and in providing the incentive and the energy that really got me moving to assist him in the project.
And I gotta jump in here. It is an amazing book. It is really, really wonderful.
Yeah, for our guests here, if you've seen the exhibit, it is just the upper 10% of the bigger story, and the book that Larry and Dick wrote together takes you into the most fascinating crevices of the story and very unexpected directions, and the story of Dick Conter himself, the story of his entire life, his long life, his life in the ukulele world, his life of traveling with the ukulele, his life as a seaman, an explorer. It's a fascinating little book.
Romance and tragedy, all types.
Yes. I know.
All types of things.
Something for everybody. Can you talk about how you did the signatures? I find that the most fascinating piece about your reproduction.
Well, after tracing all, I took high resolution photography of the ukulele, and then blowing that imagery up, 4 to 6 times, I traced and drew the signatures, basically capturing them on a digital tablet. Mm-hmm. After that, I positioned them all on a separate layer directly on top of their photographic signature, so that they're all in the exact correct positions. And so once we had the artwork, we could go to our newly acquired laser machine and burn the images. But before we did that, we applied masking tape to the entire surface of the top, and we burned through the masking tape. So all the signatures were burned through. Before removing the masking tape, we used an airbrush and sprayed very fine black spray paint that took its place into the bottom of each laser engraving to make the signatures show up better. Then we peeled the masking tape away and proceeded with lacquering. So that's how it was done. It was pretty interesting. There are 3 different levels of signatures. There's for certain signatures that we're 100% confident of, signatures that we're kind of pretty sure of, and then signatures that maybe are a little bit of a stretch. So we divided them into 3 categories, and we also adjusted the intensity of the laser, and in some case, in the third case of being a little uncertain, we didn't use black spray paint in the bottom of the of those burns. So that's how they're differentiated.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
And looking at the instrument, and it's funny, I never noticed this, but now hearing you having said that, and looking at the the ukulele, I can really see that. So, I mean, it's a beautifully done thing. It really is.
Well, I will credit Michael Gurian, my great friend Michael Gurian. You might be aware of Gurian Stringed Instruments, and he is the brilliance behind pulling this off for us.
Dick, how many of these has Martin made?
I think about 100.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You know, I'm honestly not sure. I'd have to do a little checking. It might be considerably more than that, but I think last time I checked it was about 100.
Wow. Well, I gotta tell you, this is one of my favorites. I mean, it says, and also this is gonna sound weird. Okay, beware. This is weirdness coming. It's also the best smelling ukulele I have ever seen. The koa, the fresh cut koa in this has an aroma, like you know how wood has that really wonderful smell, and you could just go, oh my gosh, is that koa has a similar kind of thing going on. It just smells great.
And
Okay, Matthew, so I guess we need to take the lid off of our case in the exhibit so people can come and smell the instrument.
Yeah, well, I don't think the original one would probably still have its wood smell.
No, but we have the reproduction in the exhibit as well.
Oh yeah, no, seriously,
Okay.
Dick, do you agree with me or
you're also smelling Spanish cedar, because Spanish cedar is the interior lining of the instrument. So there's cedar mixed with koa.
Oh wait, okay. So what part is cedar? Is the interior lining of the
ribbon lining? Yes.
Is cedar? Okay.
Yep.
That may be what you're smelling.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what it is. It smells great. I mean,
The question is, will it keep moss away from your clothes?
yeah. So.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm going to wrap things up here. It's been a pleasure talking with you. It's been fun to connect. Again, Matthew, who was holed down in Palm Springs during the pandemic. Wonderful to have you join us early this morning, and good to see you. Matthew and I have traveled the world together in search of rare musical instruments.
We have been some strange places.
Yes. And Dick is a great new friend of the museum. The Martin Company in Nazareth is just a stone's throw from Morristown, a lovely day trip out there. We learned that the Martin Museum will be reopening this fall, and the tours to the factory, which if you've never done a tour of the Martin Guitar Factory, that is an incredible short excursion from here that you should plan doing with your friends and family. It's just absolutely
It is really, really amazing.
And I'm thinking maybe Matt can take us out with George Harrison's fabulous ukulele piece, Something.
Oh, do you want me to do it like he did it?
Yeah.
Do it, Matt.
Something in the way she knows. Wait. Sorry. Something in the way she moves attracts me like no other lover. How's that?
Good enough. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you, Matthew, so much for joining us today. And thank you, Dick, also for joining in. Thank you, Cleveland, as always. This is one event in a series of members appreciation month events. If you haven't seen the exhibition yet, feel free to come in on Sunday of this weekend. We will have members only gallery hours and spark lab hours as well. And we will also have a Smithsonian film screening of Dinosaur Cold Case. So I hope that you can all join us there as well. And thank you again to everyone who tuned in.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.